Isn't she doing this wrong? I think she should add a bit more. Hearing the conversation, I look over at my daughter-in-law Cheryl, who seems utterly stunned. Cheryl looks panicked, holding an apple and just floundering about. Listening to the ongoing conversation between my husband and my son, I start to feel my anger boiling. My husband and son hang up after making their point clear to Cheryl. I lock eyes with Cheryl, who was trembling. She even drops the apple she was holding. Ignoring her distress, I ask, "Could you call them back?" Cheryl, nearly in tears, dials my husband again. While listening to the annoyed voices of my husband and son, I wonder what I should do. My name is Reina, and I'm 62 years old. I've been helping with household chores at home ever since I graduated from high school. I met my husband Oliver through a family introduction, and we got married. Soon after, we had our son and lived happily. My husband would always attend our son Miguel's school events, no matter how busy he was. My son is really cute, and I can't help it. Even when I was sick and couldn't do housework, he would try his best to help. "How are you feeling? Can you eat some chicken soup?" I had to smile when my husband cautiously brought over a pot of soup. It seems he made it after putting our son to bed. Seeing me laugh, my husband joined in, albeit awkwardly. Ever since our son got married, he no longer helps with household chores. But he's good to his wife Cheryl, so I guess it's okay. Sometimes when I'm not feeling well, I find myself craving my husband's chicken soup. I'll never forget the taste of that soup. Lately, I've not been feeling well. It's probably due to age, but I've been having a constant discomfort in my stomach, and I haven't had much of an appetite. Nowadays, since we're living with my son and his wife, Cheryl is in charge of cooking and washing dishes. I handle the rest of the household chores. I can't complain since I'm relieved from most of the cumbersome tasks of cooking and washing dishes. However, I've been feeling feverish lately, and usually lie down on the sofa after finishing the laundry. Just then, my husband walked into the living room. Feeling sluggish, I couldn't get up, but watched his movements carefully. Ignoring me, he passed by the sofa, went to the kitchen table, and started making coffee. The strong aroma of freshly brewed coffee made me cough involuntarily. Hearing that, my husband clicked his tongue softly and left the living room in a hurry once his coffee was ready. It's sad, but lately he's been so cold towards me. It's like I'm a burden to him. I can't pinpoint when things started going south. Somewhere along the line, this is what we've become. Thinking of how caring he used to be made me tear up, and I gently wiped my eyes with my sleeve. Tonight's dinner is meatloaf, but given my poor health, I opted for chicken soup. I'm fully aware of the hassle it takes to prepare a separate meal for one person, but lately, I can't stomach the same food as everyone else. Yet Cheryl, my son's wife, made me chicken soup without a hint of complaint. What a blessing she is in our family. "Mom, chicken soup again? Cheryl's gone through the trouble to make a nice dinner. Isn't it rude not to eat it?" "Don't say that, Miguel. I'm sure Reina feels bad enough as it is." Cheryl interjects with a chuckle. I smile wryly and let her comment slide. Though Cheryl is a bit blunt at times, she's an excellent cook and very considerate. Today's chicken soup was clearly made with my health in mind. She even added a touch of citrus zest to simulate my flagging appetite. As everyone else happily chatted and dug into their meatloaf, I sipped my chicken soup. Suddenly, I stopped. The soup tasted off. I can't describe it, but it had a chemical taste. At first, I thought it was the wax from the citrus zest, but even avoiding it didn't help. But even after avoiding the citrus peels to give it another taste test, something still felt off. I couldn't help but furrow my brows, catching my husband's attention, who gave me a stern look in return. Despite feeling guilty towards Cheryl, I left most of my plate untouched. Cheryl noticed and asked with concern, "Didn't it taste good?" Feeling cornered, I lied that I wasn't feeling well and let the moment pass. What did I do wrong? Days passed and I was feeling a bit better. Since Cheryl and my son had plans to go out, today was my turn to cook. Eager to finally get out of the house, I went shopping, but my body felt sluggish, perhaps from being bedridden due to my recent illness. Thinking it was just a lack of exercise, I decided to walk to the nearby supermarket. While waiting for the traffic light, a sudden chill ran through my body, and I felt my vision go dark. I instinctively squatted down, but now found myself sweating profusely. Passers-by glanced at me curiously as they walked by. I couldn't move from the spot, clutching my collar tightly, hearing the distant commotion of people and an ambulance siren, until I eventually lost consciousness. When I regained it, I was staring at a white ceiling. I was in a hospital room. Apparently, I had collapsed on the way to the store and had been brought in by an ambulance. "Oh, Reina, you're awake?" Turning towards the voice, I saw Cheryl standing by my bed. I tried to respond, but my body was uncooperative. For that, I couldn't be more grateful to Cheryl, who showed no signs of annoyance. Looking up to say thanks, something about Cheryl's face seemed different. I couldn't pinpoint it, but it scared me. Without noticing my discomfort, Cheryl took an apple from the fruit basket she probably brought for me. "Reina, you haven't been eating well lately, probably malnutrition. Eat this and get better soon." she said, peeling the apple with a fruit knife. Suddenly a phone rang. I wondered whose it was for a moment. It was Cheryl's. I knew I shouldn't, but I glanced at the screen. My husband's name was displayed. Cheryl, your phone's ringing. Oh, yes. Can you put it on speaker? My hands are full. While in the middle of peeling the apple, Cheryl hesitated for a second to put it down quickly, but gave up and said so. Doing as told, I answered the phone and pressed the speaker button. How is she? She just woke up. I'm peeling an apple for her right now. You're conscious again? What stamina you have. What's going on? You're awake already? From the start of the call, the conversation seemed to be off. Not quite what I expected from people who were supposedly worried about me. Especially my husband and son's part of the conversation made me uneasy. Didn't expect her to wake up this soon. Did we mess up somehow? Hey Cheryl, you've been skimping on the detergent lately, haven't you? Should we add a bit more? Detergent? What on earth are they talking about? I look over at Cheryl. She's holding an apple and her face is pale, trembling. Seeing her face, it clicked for me. It seems they've been adding detergent to my meals. Cheryl had been watching my expression change and finally dropped the apple she was holding. Meanwhile, the conversation between my husband and son continued, unabated. Even if we fix the detergent ratio, maybe just mixing it into the food isn't enough. Yeah, I'd like that insurance money sooner rather than later. Maybe we should mix it into her drinks next time. It's amazing she hasn't noticed. She won't notice. This is someone who doesn't even realize she's despised. Laughing heartily, my husband and son ended the call. I clenched the bedsheets, biting my lip. How did things turn so dark? Why must I suffer this way at the hands of my husband, son, and even my daughter-in-law? What did I do to deserve this? There are no answers, no matter how much I think about it. I shot Cheryl a fierce glare. She's trembling. Probably never expected their plot would be revealed like this. She panics, fidgeting with her hands. Taking advantage of the moment, I pull my cell phone from my bag. I open the recording app and say to Cheryl, "Call them again." What? Call my husband. Again. Overwhelmed by my urgency, Cheryl dials the number. After a few rings, the call connects. What's up, Cheryl? Did she finally kick the bucket? Next to my husband, who answered with a nasty grin, my son casually talks to Cheryl. Don't worry, we'll split mom's insurance money evenly. Actually, you'll get a bit more for all your trouble. Yeah, adding detergent to her meals is no small feat. You deserve it. They laughed uproariously and hung up. I stop the recording and glare at Cheryl once more. Finally accepting her fate, Cheryl weakly lowers her arms and looks up at the ceiling. I grabbed Cheryl by the shoulders and pressed her for answers. Realizing she was cornered, Cheryl spilled all the details. She confessed that her husband and son-in-law loved to gamble, and they often went to gamble together. But they kept losing and went into debt, continuing their gambling sprees anyway. This mounting debt left them desperate, and they decided to take out a life insurance policy on me, without my knowledge, to collect the money. This plan started 2 years ago. But there are various conditions for an insurance payout, and the quickest, surefire way to meet them was if I became ill. So they apparently came up with a scheme to slowly poison me by mixing detergent into my food. Now that she mentioned it, about 2 years ago, Cheryl suddenly started taking over meal preparation. At first, I offered to help, but Cheryl was strongly against it, so I let her handle it. No wonder she was so opposed. If I helped with the meals, it would be difficult to mix detergent into my plate only, and if caught, the whole plan would fall apart. Then Cheryl dropped another bombshell. The masterminds behind this plan were Oliver and Miguel. They both assured me it would work. After hearing this, I couldn't stay put. Pretending to go to the bathroom, I slipped out of the hospital. Initially, I thought about going home and giving my husband and son a piece of my mind, but that wouldn't satisfy me, so I decided on another course of action. I immediately sought out a lawyer after leaving the hospital. Luckily, it didn't take much time to find a law office, and I quickly went in and explained my situation. The lawyer was skeptical at first, but after I played the recording from earlier, his expression changed dramatically. He advised me to contact the police, but I told him there was something else I wanted to do first, and we proceeded with the necessary paperwork. With everything in place, except what I needed from my husband, I set out again with my lawyer. Of course, our next destination was the police station. I began by explaining the whole situation. The police were as skeptical as the lawyer initially, but as soon as I provided the recording and additional explanations from the lawyer, they swung into action. Afterward, a female officer accompanied me back to the hospital, while the lawyer headed to my house with the police. Upon returning to the hospital, Cheryl was still there and was immediately taken away by the police. As for me, I felt briefly relieved without Cheryl around, but couldn't relax, worried that my husband and son might burst into the hospital room. I went through cycles of lying down and getting up on the bed. Eventually, a nurse came to check on me. I had to explain a lot, but it distracted me a bit. The nurse was shocked by my story and seemed speechless. She remembered the policewoman and Cheryl leaving earlier and went back to the nurse station to process my admission for the day. I can't say how much time had passed, but eventually a different pair of police officers visited me in the hospital room. Worried that my husband and son had escaped, I listened to their updates, fighting back tears. To my surprise, they informed me that my husband, son, and Cheryl had been safely arrested. When the police had initially entered my home, neither my husband nor my son were present, leading them to suspect they had fled. But in reality, they were just out gambling and got arrested after being questioned by the police patrolling the area. I couldn't believe their nerve, gambling while I was being rushed to the hospital. Though they had wished for my health to deteriorate, they should have known I was waking up. Their casual attitude really infuriated me. But their recklessness led to their swift arrest, so I guess there's no use complaining now. In the end, my husband, son, and Cheryl were charged with attempted murder. On top of that, my husband was served divorce papers from me, through my lawyer. At first, he opposed the divorce, but after hearing the sum of the damages he'd owe, he agreed to all my conditions, including transferring the house into my name in exchange for a lower settlement. As for my son and Cheryl, well, with my son in jail, I seized the opportunity to sever all family ties through a legal affidavit. No more financial support, period. Even if he's released, I'm treating him like a complete stranger. As for Cheryl, I told her parents everything. Initially, they didn't believe me, but by the time I finished my story, they were visibly shaken. And sincerely apologized. Unexpectedly, Cheryl's mother left the room and returned with a thick envelope. Inside the envelope was $50,000. As I stood there in disbelief, they both continued to apologize profusely. It seemed like they intended this as compensation. I tried to decline several times, but they insisted, almost in tears, that I should accept it, so I finally did. Time passed and I found myself back in good spirits. The spacious house, now devoid of people, allowed me to live my life without compromise. And yes, I could finally eat whatever I liked without worrying. Since that incident, I think I've become a bit of a germaphobe. When doing the dishes, I minimize the use of soap. I still think it's a waste of water, but I make sure to thoroughly rinse off any soap. It's not just for dishes, I extend this habit to showering and laundry too. If I don't, I hesitate to even put things in my mouth or on my body. While my husband, son, and Cheryl are certainly to blame for this change, I think I'll gradually get better. Because they're not in my house anymore, I have the freedom to live as I please. Some may think I'm emotionally scarred, but from my perspective, I feel utterly relieved and refreshed. I've switched to a new cell phone. The incriminating voice recordings have been turned over to the police, and honestly, just keeping that phone would have felt disgusting. As I think about the freedom my new phone represents, I'm motivated to try things I've never dared before. Maybe I'll get into the trending world of cooking live streams.